it's funny, in South Africa we have a saying, and you must remember, because of so many of the struggle leaders in South Africa were either imprisoned or exiled, the movement in South Africa was held together in large part by women in the country. And so it's weird for me, because I understand you travel the world, you understand that everywhere feminism is different and the idea of women is different. But I grew up in a world that was very matriarchal and where women were the most dangerous freedom fighters that existed. No, this is true. You read up on Winnie Mandela. Like, Nelson Mandela was an icon, but the police in the country were afraid of Winnie Mandela. You know, they were, and we had a phrase in South Africa that was, we still use it today, which was, "Watinta bafazi, watinta mbokoko," which means you strike a woman, you strike a rock. And that's what I grew up learning. It was kudos, man. It was fire. It was fire. And a lot of the time, my mom would strike me with a rock. So in my family, my two younger brothers are so from my mother's second marriage, and so I'm still the only person in my family who looks like this. So my mom is African woman, black Xhosa woman. My father is Swiss from Switzerland, so he was a white man, and so I look like this. And then my mom remarried a black man, so my brothers don't look like me either, right? And I remember what was really beautiful was my brothers. We always spoke about this stuff. So my parents, they were like, "Yeah, different dads. We get how this works." So my brother one day, I pick him up from school, right? He's really young at the time. It was maybe like, I'm trying to think, it was 9, maybe 10 years old. And he gets in the car and he's just deflated. He gets in the passenger seat and he fastens his seatbelt. And I'm like, "What's going on, Isaac?" And he's like, "Hey, Trevor." He's like, "Oh, kids, man. I can't do this. Kids." So I go, "Oh, kids? Tell me more." And then he's like, I just don't know what to do with kids, Trevor. You know, like today, one of my friends said, "Oh, are we walking home?" Then I said, "No, my brother's picking me up." Then he said, "Who's your brother?" Then I said, "Trevor." Then now when we're walking, he sees you in the car. Then he says, "Who's that?" Then I said, "It's my brother." Then he says, "But how can your brother be white?" Then I said, "He's not white. He's not white, he's mixed." Then he said, "But you're not mixed, you don't look the same. How can your brother not look the same?" So now I'm like, "Oh man, I'm gonna have to go through this." So then I'm like, so what did you say to him? And he's like, "Trevor, I'd have to explain it the way kids understand." He said, I just said to him, I said, "Zweli, you've got to understand, people are like chocolates, okay? Like you can have a white chocolate, and you can have a dark chocolate, and you can have a milk chocolate, but it's all Nestle, okay?" Did I hear somebody, was there a French person who had a fiancé? Is that? Very cool, man, congratulations. It was nice. It was weird, because I was listening to you when you're speaking, and I was like, it's weird, because fiancé is French, isn't it? Because I know this sounds weird, but in my head you said, "Oh, yeah, no, and this is my fiancé," and then I was like, what's the French for fiancé? Is that a little bit weird to you, that in English you have to say some French words every now and again? Right? Because that's the thing, we do that. We'll be like fiancé, entrepreneur, you know, think about it, we do that, touché. We just say that to each other in conversation as people. Someone will say something, you say something back, and you're like, "Oh, touché." But I don't think French people, do you guys do that with English? Or French people just hanging out with each other and it's like, le patron d'ici, le patron dessus, and also, "Haha, you touch me." You do that? You don't, right? It's just weird. It's totally weird to me. We just use other languages in our language. That's really strange. That's exciting, man. So, say again? French fries are not French? I like how you said that with passion. And French fries, they are not French. Trevor, I have to tell you all of these secrets. The French fries are not French. But do you eat them in France? Yeah. So why are you complaining? That's fine. You guys also where are these French fries from? They say they are from France. Jean-Pierre, are these yours? No, they are not. Michel, are these your friends? No, they are not their friends. Who are their friends from? They said they are French friends, but no French person knows where they are from. Oh, man. What made you move from France? You said 17 years you've lived in Detroit. What made you move? Say again? Atlanta, sorry, yeah, Atlanta. What? You just walked? Oh, shit, did you say work? Oh, sorry, your accent, because you said, no, I did walk. And then I was like, God damn. I was like, wow, that's one hell of a journey, my friend. Just one day I was walking I was walking by the Eiffel Tower, and I said, I've seen this before. I've seen all of this before. I'm going to walk a little further. And then I walked and I walked and I walked some more. And then a few years later, I was like, Atlanta! Then I was tired, so I stayed. There's no reason to go back. Oh, wow. That's fine. And then you fell in love with Atlanta and you stayed? No? What happened? Oh, wow. Oh, man. So you go to Atlanta, the recession happens, so now you're stuck in Atlanta. That is so dope. I feel like I should make a TV show about you, man. That's like a fun story. It's like I ended up in Atlanta and now this is my life. How did you make money? I became a rapper. In the ATL, I became the only French trap rapper. Sur le métro de bétail, wouh! Wow, trop de toi. T'aimes ça? Attends. Dans le métro de bétail. T'aimes ça? C'est tranquille. T'as la voiture de métro. Any questions? No? You good? Okay. Yeah? How's? Oh, how's Foofy? Wow, that's a deep cut. Man. You can't just ask me that like just random. You gotta be like, hey, Trevor, so I read in your book, and you can't just be like, how's Foofy? Because my mind went, who the hell? Foofy? No, because Foofy died. So for those who don't, so I had a dog when I was growing up. Like one of the dogs we had, my mom was working at a pharmaceutical company, and her colleague came to work one day and was like, hey, my neighbor's dog impregnated my dog, so now I have all these puppies I don't want, and they're like this weird mix of like a bull terrier and a Maltese poodle. So do you want to take them? And the mom was like, all right, I'll take 2. And then my mom brought them home, and I'd never had a dog before, and I was like, this is the most amazing thing in the world. And so we raised them, and it was 2 beautiful dogs. They looked completely different, but they were sisters. They were the best, Foofy and Panther. And my mom called the one Panther because she had a pink nose, so the Pink Panther. And then, and Foofy was like the dumbest, most beautiful dog ever. And Panther was the smartest, ugliest dog you've ever seen. And so like I loved Foofy the most because she just like looked really vicious. And I used to think that Foofy was really stupid. And then one day what happened was, like at our house, somebody was trying to like come into the house, like a family friend, and they were trying to open the gate, and then they moved the gate, and then the gate fell. And then Panther ran away because they like to sleep by the gate, and then Panther ran, but then Foofy didn't. And then the gate hit her, and then like it broke her spine. It was devastating. So then we went to the vet, and then like the vet was like, I can't help her, you know, we've got to put her down, put her out of her misery. And the vet was like, but this was amazing. How did you guys raise a deaf dog? And we were like, what? And he was like, we're like, what do you mean a deaf dog? And he was like, oh, like afterwards, like when I was just going through examining her while she's still like living, I realized that like she wasn't born with, I guess, a certain part of the cochlea or something. And we were like, wait, this dog was deaf the whole time? And we just genuinely, I'd literally just be like, Foofy, sit! Listen to me! Sit, Foofy! And I was like, you're so dumb! You're so dumb! And I never knew that the dog, and then we realized, what used to happen was, when we'd call the dogs, we'd be like, Foofy, Panther, and Foofy would never come, but Panther would come running sometimes, and then she'd like look at you, and then she'd run back, and then they would both come. And I always used to be like, Foofy's just dumb. And then I realized Panther was like, she didn't hear, and then she'd go back and fetch her, and then both of them would come. And then like now I went back and my was like, Foofy, Foofy, I miss you, Foofy. So that's how Foofy's doing. She's, yeah, sometimes just don't want to know what the movie's about. And then you, oh, hi.
I just want to say I really like the behind the scenes stuff. I always watch it on YouTube, so like, can I hang out?
Oh, wow, thank you. No, it's not a, no, you can please sit, sorry, I don't want to be rude, but it's not a, like it's not like a, I just talk to the audience.
Yeah, and I can talk to the audience. You think the audience doesn't want to talk to me? Yeah! We can like talk about your dead dog again and bum everybody out again.
Well, it's not like I just brought up my dead dog. Someone in the audience asked me about my dead dog, and then that's how it.
See, it's happening again, just like I said. He's talking about it again. He's bumming everybody out.
No, it's just like between the scenes. It's just like a random. I've never been.
That's great. No, I'm in a hoodie because you know the studio's freezing and the ladies have to wear the cute dresses, and I wanted to finally be comfortable in a studio because of the patriarchy. It's always freezing. Ladies are excited. I see you in the halter top. I see you. She's uncomfortable.
I feel like you've taken my between the scenes and turned it against me. It's like an intimate moment I share with, and you guys just turned on me as well. We were hanging out, and now you just flipped it on me. So what do you want to do? Did you say so? Did you say so? Give us sweaters? How did this? I didn't take your sweaters away. Why is the mob cheering for sweaters now? There's no sweaters rule in this. Wow, you guys are next level. Give us sweaters, Trevor! This is how Arab Spring starts. This is like, we want the sweaters! No, yeah, I genuinely thank you for enjoying Between the Scenes, but I don't know if there's anything you can do.
Am I the first guest to come on the Between the Scenes?
You're the first guest who's come out after we're done with you. This is like a very weird...
Honestly, I put on a hoodie and I felt really, really confident.
So you were just like, I'm just gonna come. I don't know what to do right now. Because when Between the Scenes,
well, let's take questions from the audience. You know, that's what you do. That's what I'll do.
You can pick who the question comes from. That's what I do.
Hey, gray girl.
Yeah. So first of all, not to make this weird, but you're on my boyfriend's list.
What's up, bro? Hey. How you doing? You doing good? You haven't put a ring on it yet? What's going on?
No, not yet.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Am I on your list? Okay, great. It's good to know I've got options. Thank you.
Wait, can you back? What do you mean on your list? Like how?
Oh.
What do you mean?
He's so cute. You know, your list.
No.
Of like somebody
like
that-
favorite actresses?
That like somebody that you can sleep with like you get like a hall pass for like 5 people. It's like 5 people? Yeah.
5 people you can sleep with?
Yeah, if you run into them and
Wait,
the
this is
moment
like a normal
right.
relationship thing?
Yeah.
You just go like, there are 5 people you can, and then you were like, she's on your list? But
Yeah.
like, so you thought you can. I don't understand how this works. No, I mean like, does the list, so do you know that you're on lists, or how does that work?
People have made me aware that I'm on lists.
But they don't consult you at all.
I don't have to sleep with him, Trevor.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's a bit weird that she's like, just so you know, you're on his list. Like it's okay.
No, she's trying to wingman her own boyfriend, and I respect it.
Wow. Okay. You know what I feel about like this list thing is like.
Oh wow.
I feel like the list is a lot more like fun when the person's not real. Like, because right now it's like the list is real now. Isn't it supposed to be like someone you'd never meet? And now you're like there, like you're smiling a lot. Wow. Okay. Who's on your list then?
The top of my list is probably Hugh Jackman.
Oh, that guy's an asshole. No, I'm kidding. I literally say that because he's one of the nicest people in Hollywood. That's why I can make that joke.
He's too nice, and he's like Australian nice, which makes it even worse. He's like super, oh yeah, nice to see you again, oh yeah. So, who else?
Bon Jovi.
Okay, Hugh Jackman, Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
Who else? Who else is on the list?
You, sure.
No, don't put me on your list. Don't put me. I don't want sympathy list. Don't you sympathy list me. Don't sympathy list. I don't want I want like thought out lists. Hugh Jackman, Bon Jovi. Anyone else?
Matthew McConaughey.
Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that because. No, he's not here. You guys thought I was going to bring out Matthew McConaughey, and he was just going to walk up to you and be like, all right. You guys have any questions before we move on? Anything you want to chat about? No, we good? Yes, sir?
Do you think that like reparations should just go to like one like group, or like should it target like people that are in the same kind of like socioeconomic like group? Because
That's an interesting question. What do you mean by that?
well, like there are like white
recently is the key. Recently is the key.
The country like deindustrialized, right? So like a lot of people in like manufacturing jobs and stuff, like
Right.
areas were affected.
But so to your question, I think you have to understand what the word reparations means first. So reparations, you are repairing something that you have broken. You are paying for something that you were supposed to pay for. I'm not saying that there aren't people living in America today who are suffering and are going through pain and strife because of what's happening when it comes to the machines taking jobs, factories becoming industrialized, etc. But reparations is a specific conversation about a specific time in America, and that is black people were slaves. You know what I mean? I've even heard people say like, oh, but there were some of the Irish who were indentured. Like, yeah, slavery. Look at the numbers, look at the time, look at the level of work. You could not work toward your freedom. For most black people in America, this was a time when you lived and died as a slave. And so that's what reparations is about. And so I hear what you're saying, but I think that's a completely separate conversation that needs to be had about the now. Because if you are not careful, what you then do is you combine everybody's suffering into the same bowl, and you make it seem like all injustices have the same weighting, and they don't. Just like crimes, theft isn't the same as murder. We don't try them the same way. And as much as there is a white person who's suffering today, I feel for anybody who's suffering, because I know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to suffer. I didn't come from a wealthy family. We struggled when I was growing up, but I also understand that there are levels of that suffering. And so sometimes white people, it does block a white person because you go white privilege, and a person goes, I'm poor and I'm white, where's the privilege? White people are like, I wish I could activate my white privilege. I wish I could do it right now. White privilege, give me something. I get that. Trust me, I get it. It is hard to accept that you have benefits because of the color of your skin if you cannot see the benefits that you have. But the thing I try to explain to a person is, think of it more like golf. Don't think of it as privilege, then think of it like a handicap. Right? In golf, they acknowledge that you are in a position where you need so many advantages to be competitive in the game. Right? So what they say is you have a handicap of 15, so that means like you're going to be hitting from this tee and you get more chances to get the ball in because we understand the position you're in. And if you're a black person in America, from slavery, from day one, the number of injustices that have held black people back in America amount to an insurmountable, like you look at black people's freedom, you look at black people's land, just land alone. The amount of wealth you can acquire over time if you own land is exponential, because you have the land, you have the fact that you can borrow based on the land, you have the fact that you can use the money that you have borrowed to grow more wealth, you can use it to grow your family's wealth. Just taking that away from black people alone is crippling them. And so you combine that with slavery, and then you look at Jim Crow laws. You didn't let black people in America live in the areas that they wanted to live in. They couldn't get loans from the banks that they wanted to get loans from. And then on top of that, when they started getting the loans from American banks were found to be giving them higher interest rates when in fact they were the same risk as many of the other races that they were giving loans to. So when you combine all of those things, I think it's safe to say that black Americans have a conversation that they need to be having with the United States. Doesn't involve me, doesn't involve white people, it's like, yo, American government, meet the black people. That's it. Have that conversation. Any questions or anything before we move on? Anything you want to chat about? Anything on your mind? It's a fun part of a live show. Yes?
What's the difference between racism in South Africa and racism in America?
Oh, I love that. I love how you ask such a deep question in such a bubbly way. Because your tone of voice was really fun. So what's the difference between... Because there I thought you were going to say like, oh, the difference between like summer and spring for you. You're like, what's the difference between racism in South Africa and racism in the USA? That was like my favorite topic. I will tell you what, I think the biggest difference between racism in America and racism in South Africa is I find that South African racism is and was a lot more blatant. And so there's more of an acknowledgement of it as an idea. And I always say to people, I know it's strange to say this, but I often think that was the greatest gift the apartheid government gave us, is that it was there, it was happening to you, it wasn't hidden. Do you know what I mean? So you were just like, we don't want this. People would fight, stop this apartheid, it's racism. And then the government would be like, yes, of course it is racism. That's what we're doing to you. The blacks must not do this. But then what happened in America is, you hit that period where like they started changing things. I don't know if it was around Nixon, and they were like, oh, we've got to be silent about this. And then it wasn't blatant anymore. And so I always thought that's a terrible thing to do to people, because now people have to be like detectives of their own racism. They have to figure it out.
You know what I mean? So let me give you an example. In South Africa, the government would just say, blacks cannot live in these areas. You're black, you don't live here. Now you know I'm black, I don't live here. I don't like it, but I don't live here. You get what I'm saying? But then in America, you'd be like, can I get a home loan? And they'd be like, no. And you'd be like, why? And they'd be like, no. They'd be like, why can't I? And then you just start realizing, you're like, wow, how come the black people all seem to only be able to get houses in these areas, but not in these areas? And these school districts are better. How come the money is going here? How come? And you get what I'm saying? And I know it sounds strange to say, but I think there's something liberating about fighting an obvious enemy as opposed to one that you have to prove exists. That's probably the biggest difference between America and, yeah. And can I just say, what is your name?
Katrina.
Katrina, you should be a debate moderator in this country. Because the way you snuck that question in was so chilled. You would throw politicians off what are you?
I'm a teacher.
You're a teacher, aha! You see, that was, yeah, no, politicians wouldn't see you coming, you know? You just be like, so let's talk about all of the campaign finance fraud. And how you stole that money. Any questions before we move on? We've got a moment. Anything on your mind? Yes, up there.
Out of all the accents you do, what's your favorite accent?
Out of all the accents I do, what's my favorite? Did you say South African? Well, I'm not doing it. That's amazing. My favorite one to do is a South African accent. You know, I just wake up every day speaking in another accent, then I choose. What is my favorite to do? That's an interesting. It depends. Depends where I am. Every time I go to a new country, I discover a new accent that I enjoy. It's actually a shortcut that I use for learning languages. So, because people don't realize this, if you want to learn languages, there are two things you have to understand. One, language is mostly about rhythm, and two, you have to be willing to be an idiot to learn a new language. That's what slows most people down. Like kids, that's why kids learn languages so quickly. They mimic everything you say. You know, so you'll be like, don't touch that. Then they'll be like, da da da. And you're like, don't touch, da da da. And you know what I mean? They're not like, I'm not saying it correctly. They just keep speaking. So what I try and do, that's how I learn languages, is I start with the accent, and then you learn the intonation. So it depends. I'm trying to think. I think Nigerian is one of my favorites. I love the Nigerian accent. Because like the Nigerian accent does to English what English desperately needs. Like English is a very stiff, sort of boring language, you know, it's just like, hello, my name is Trevor, you know. If in English you're just like, did you see the traffic outside? It was really bad, and you know what I mean? And then like when Nigerians come inside, did you see that traffic outside, huh? Are you talking about that thing? Can you believe something like that, huh? It's like, you know? And like Nigerians have the best metaphors and similes that they'll throw in. They'll be like, the irritable bowel syndrome of 9th Avenue traffic, huh? It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. You know, every time one of these like internet outrage things happens about which character is being played by whom and people get angry, I would get it if people had good faith arguments, but you can tell that people are just using these moments to disguise a discriminatory idea or like a racism that they hold. It's it's like, it's your thing. You know, people are gonna act like, oh no, the Little Mermaid, I'm here because I'm a Little Mermaid purist. I come up with all these bullshit answers. They'll be like, you look at the history of the Little Mermaid. I'm sorry, the history of the Little Mermaid? You mean the imagination of the Little Mermaid? Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, it's like, yeah, if you were a fan, you would have known that Disney had long created Black Mermaids. Like they did this, they spin off all their movies, they've had tons of them. They had like a Black Mermaid, she did sign language, it used to be a cartoon when we were kids. People don't care about it. They're like, it's never happened. It's just, look, here's the thing, it's not about race, it's just about realism. I'm sorry, what? And then it's ironic that they try and use representation as the argument the other way around, you know? So they will say, it's not about representation. It shouldn't. Who cares who plays the role? All that matters is the best person gets the job. And it's like, have you heard Halle Bailey sing? Have you heard her sing? You're gonna tell me the best person? Like, who do you think they got? You think Disney is just out there in the street like, you come, let's go. You think they play games like that? It is the best person for the job. You're angry about who the best person was. That's what you're angry about. And it's like, no, but the Little Mermaid, she means so much. And I don't deny that. I don't deny that it must have been amazing for any redhead little girl to see the Little Mermaid. It must have been amazing. It's a beautiful experience. But the movie's still there. You get what I'm saying? It's not gone. You can't not watch it. It hasn't been burned. It is still there. You can still watch it and you can enjoy it. I do all the time. It's not going anywhere. It's like, you get so angry. Oh, but what about the little girls with red hair who won't what? See themselves in what? A Disney cartoon? Are you being serious right now? You have the princess in Brave. She was redhead. Remember her, right? You have Anna from Frozen, right? You have the little kid from Up. Remember the one like pulls off the helmet and like the hair does a thing. It's the cutest thing. It was like ah. Remember that? Red hairs. There's tons of other characters. There are more red-haired Disney like stars, like women who are stars in the franchise, than black women. But now you're going to make it seem like and it's not like one should be against the other. There's no need. You have the Little Mermaid. It's fun. Now you've got Halle Berry playing the real version of it. That's fun. Don't make it about realism. Guys, it's under the sea. There's a crab. There's a crab that is going to talk, and you're worried about this element? People are like, well, I just think it should be. It's all the thing. And then I love when people go, oh yeah, so if you don't care, then how would you feel if the Black Panther was played by a white guy? I'm like, well, the difference here is the Black Panther. Blackness is central to the character's identity. Like literally. You know what I mean? It's like literally, that is the whole point of the thing. And by the way, if you're gonna bring a white guy who's gonna be like Vibranium, bring him. I wanna see that guy. Just for fun. Just bring that guy. Just for the fun of it. Let's see what happens. Well, there are many people who haven't seen themselves on screen. You're gonna get angry. You're going to get angry because now somebody who's in a wheelchair is playing this role. You're going to get angry because somebody who's black is now playing that role. The original is still there. There are many parts that are still out there. It's not like there is nothing left. It's not like there's one movie in the world and there's one story and this is the only way you can tell it. There are many. Calm down. Or at the very least, we should get them to meet with Ursula and then she'd take their voices away. Just be like, until somebody kisses you, yeah, don't come back. You ready? People are so angry. Then they go touch grass, man.